Hi, I feel like I'm back from the grave. Hello, everyone. I don't even know what to say other than it's nice to see you. It's nice to be back. The last video I posted was 5 years ago, and then life got pretty busy. So I wanted to come on here I don't know, I just missed you guys. I missed you guys a lot. The last 4 years have been the hardest years of my entire life. And that's putting it very lightly. It was definitely a dark night of the soul journey. So what happened is in December 2019, I got really sick. I was driving on the freeway one day. I left work on my lunch to go pick up my son from preschool, my oldest. And as I'm driving on the freeway, taking him to my mother-in-law's house, I feel like I'm gonna pass out. So I grab his water bottle and I'm chugging it. I'm throwing it on my face because I'm just praying, oh my gosh, I just hope we make it to my mother-in-law's house. We made it, but that began a 4-year hell of a journey, of a health journey. And I just, in a nutshell, just was getting all kinds of symptoms just out of nowhere. Exhausted the medical route, went through the alternative route, exhausted the alternative route, spent a lot of money, spent a lot of time, had to have my little sister move in with us because I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand for more than 30 seconds. I was just bedridden. I had, over the course of the first 6 months, developed over 30 symptoms, ranging from neurological to immune to whatever. And I was tested for everything, and nobody knew what was going on. And at the time, my oldest was 5 and my youngest was just turning 2. So my little sister had to move in with us, and she lived with us for 2 years because I could not do anything. I could not care for myself. I couldn't even stand long enough to brush my teeth. Forget about taking a shower. Couldn't do it. Was so weak, so stiff. Within that 2 years, I discovered the mind-body connection, mind-body medicine. I discovered Dr. John Sarno, Howard Schubiner. And if you don't know who Dr. John Sarno is, he was this incredible doctor back in the 70s who realized that his patients who were experiencing chronic illness or chronic symptoms, at the time in the 70s, it was mainly, I mean, if you look him up, you're going to find all kinds of videos about him now. Like, he's been such a pioneer, and people have been doing his work and spreading his knowledge that he discovered. So in a nutshell, and you can dive deeper into this if this resonates with you or you're interested or it sounds fascinating, but he discovered that patients that were having chronic pain and later chronic symptoms, chronic illness symptoms, like weird neurological stuff or whatever, he found that they all had similar personality traits, that they were all perfectionists, overachievers, people pleasers, goodists. And he deduced that all of these symptoms were due to repressed emotion, primarily rage. Whether or not you believe that or not, it's fine. But discovering that opened the door to me starting to reclaim my life. So if you look him up, he has books, the Mindbody prescription, healing back pain, all of that. And then there are offshoots of his work. There's tons of offshoots of books and therapies and practitioners now of his work. So Sarno's been around for a long time, but I discovered his books and who he was back in I want to say August or September 2021. And that's when I started to do the work to reclaim my life. Basically, in a nutshell, again, you can look deeper into this later, but Sarno basically tells his patients, your symptoms are the cause of repressed emotions, primarily rage. There's nothing wrong with you. Go live your life. And I know, like, for some, especially if you happen to be going through chronic illness or chronic symptoms yourself and you're watching this, it can sound so crass. But if you were like me, when you've gotten to this point of your journey, at that point, I had gone 2 years of getting nowhere, trying all kinds of therapies, all kinds of modalities, all kinds of medication, and getting worse. I was at the point where I needed more answers, and I just happened to land on Sarno, Dr. Sarno, and he happened to be the gateway to healing, true healing that comes with no vices and no, all these things. At the time, there were like not very many resources, and this was only what, two or 3 years ago. There weren't very many Sarno resources or Mindbody resources even back then. I feel like there's been such an explosion of this information in the last few years because people are healing. Like, clearly it's working. So all this to say, this video is for people who are experiencing chronic symptoms. They've learned about the mind-body connection. They've learned about Dr. Sarno. They've learned about TMS. I didn't mention that. Dr. Sarno coined the term tension myositis syndrome, which later became known as tension myoneural syndrome, aka TMS, which basically means your symptoms are due to repressed emotion, primarily rage. Therefore, there is nothing structurally wrong with you. So you are free to live your life. And this will teach your brain that you have nothing to fear, that there is no danger. Because the reason why it's generating all these symptoms is because it thinks your life or elements in your life are dangerous due to your stress response, due to your subconscious emotional response to them. And this is tied to your childhood trauma. This is tied to a lot of abandonment wounds. It could be tied to, even if you want to get more woo-woo about it, like ancestral things. Like, believe me, if you've never heard of Dr. Sarno before or mind-body medicine, and this sounds even just a little bit fascinating to you, get ready to go down the rabbit hole, because it's pretty wild, because of that is what I have been doing in the last 2 years in my pursuit of recovering and healing and letting my body stop freaking out, stop thinking that everything is dangerous in life, and coming back to homeostasis. Now, am I fully recovered yet? No, I'm not. But I feel well enough that when I'm not in a freaking wheelchair anymore, my sister had to push me in a wheelchair for every time I had to go like walk a few feet. Any doctor's appointments or physical therapy appointments or chiropractor appointments, I had to be pushed in a wheelchair. So I've gone from that in 2 years, which it sounds long and it felt like hell when you're in it. But I've gone from that to celebrated my sister's wedding as one of the matrons of honor at a destination wedding, going to Disneyland the day after and spending a whole day up to closing at midnight there, walking, standing in the heat, in the crowds, very sleep deprived because of all the festivities going on. So in a span of 2 to 3 years, going from sitting in a wheelchair, being useless, can't do anything, cannot even carry my child. Oh, by the way, I should mention, I had my third child during this whole ordeal. Was it planned? No. And I will talk about this later. She happened to come along. So if you watch my previous videos, I have 2 boys. My oldest is now 8, turning 9. My second just turned 6 recently. And I have an almost 2-year-old girl. And she came during this time that I was dealing with chronic illness. And that is a story that I will get to when I get to it. It was a wild and crazy story. Like, I really think I almost died. So in the last 2 to 3 years, I went from a wheelchair to now being able to keep up with my sister's wedding and all the festivities around that. And it was a destination wedding, so we had to travel, all these things. And then going to Disneyland after and spending a whole day there. I mean, that's significant. So I was like, okay, if I can do that now, then I need to start sharing these things. And I'm sharing my story because you don't hear, like if you do a YouTube search and you look for people who are documenting their recovery journeys through chronic illness or chronic symptoms, I don't see a lot talking about what it's like to go through a recovery period or a recovery dark night of the soul journey like this with young kids. Then you're dealing with marital issues because, of course, you know, physically you can't do the same things you were doing before. So then you got marriage issues and all these things come to light when life just rocks you to the core. And I just feel like I have grown so much. I have healed and recovered physically so much, but not even just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. I was forced to deal with all the childhood trauma, abandonment wounds, ancestral trauma, limiting core, and then as a result of that, realizing I had limiting core beliefs that I was operating on until I burned out. My health just collapsed. Literally. You know, it's interesting because when I was starting to think about this, and I really have a heart for especially parents who are going through this, and the spouses of wives who are going through this, because, you know, you add in a family and familial responsibilities to the mix, and it's very hard. And so like you hear of a lot of single people or, you know, people that don't have children. There's a lot of recovery stories of those people on YouTube and online, but man, you really don't see a lot of ones where, you know, people have young kids. So I've learned a lot. Understatement. I've grown a lot. And my husband has grown a lot through this process. My children they're getting the better version of their mom, but it's because I had to go through this. And is it easy? No. It is the hardest thing that you are ever going to go through in your life, but it'll completely change the entire trajectory of your life. The quality of your life will skyrocket because you are going to emerge from this journey as a different person. So yes, is it difficult? Yes. Although there are some people that heal very, very, very fast. I've had many health crises in my past, and they were able to resolve quickly because I kind of just lived my life. Not that I ignored them, but I went to go get it checked out, and the doctors said, oh, you're fine. And I think because I was younger and I didn't have a lot of life, you know, too many life stresses at the time, I was able to just kind of move on, and the symptoms just resolved one day. But clearly I had to do the deep cleanup work this time. My brain was not going to let me continue. My with all of this baggage that I was still carrying. And it was causing a lot of immense stress. And a lot of the choices in my life was causing a lot of immense stress. Oh, I wanted to share that too, because as I knew I was getting to a point where I was getting better, because I was trying to remember like the details of just from 4 years ago, from what I went through. And I was starting to forget the names of like the supplements I tried and the medication that I tried. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm at a point now where I'm starting to move on with my life and I'm moving out of this season. But if you can't wait, if you're curious about the details of what I've gone through, you can go on my website, leonvalle.com. I wrote out the whole story on there. It's called My TMS Story. In a nutshell, I'm glad you've stuck around. This is kind of a test video. I'm really, really rusty. I mean, I'm just starting to get back to life. I'm just starting to get comfortable going to a grocery store again and not being so terrified and overstimulated. So, but I am driving again. It'll make more sense when you read my story and as I dive into the details of things. If you're going through this journey, or you know someone that's going through this journey, especially if you're someone who's like me, you've learned about the mind-body connection, you've learned about Sarno, but you still are in the trenches and you still feel like you're doing something wrong or it's taking forever to heal, just know that you're on the right track. Like, this is how it goes, and this is the path out. It's either you go through the muck now, knowing that you're going to get to the other side, or you're going to stay bedbound, housebound, and that's going to be your life. And please don't choose that. You can choose which path you're going to go. And the thing is, we have one life. That's it. So you know what the better answer is. Do the hard work now. Go through the crap now. Because that's the way to get to the other side, where your nervous system will be regulated, you're back to homeostasis, and on top of that, you're more resilient to life stressors because you've already gone through the hardest thing you're probably ever going to go through in your life. So everything else after that is like, bring it on. So if this is something of interest, feel free to subscribe. I'm going to try my best to put out more videos. You've been stuck for far too long. And this is your message to pick yourself up and keep moving. Keep moving with as much self-compassion and as much patience as you can muster, because that's what this takes. It takes a lot of grit. It takes, this can apply to anything in life, right? And we're not just talking about a chronic illness journey, but maybe this is a sign of like how you landed on my video. This is a message for you saying, keep going, have grit, have patience, trust that you are on the right path, because you are, because that's what this whole life journey is about, and that you're growing and you're healing and you're gonna make it. So I'm really grateful that you're here. I'm grateful you're in my space, and I just want to help to share everything that I've learned during these hardest few years of my life, so that you don't need to go through, so you can move through your hardest times in your lives much smoother and much quicker than I am. Thanks for being here.